Didn't argue when she told me to go home. That's not who I am. I picked up my jacket, folded it over my arm, and nodded once to the night shift charge nurse on my way out. Before I reached the door, I set my card on the station counter. Just a plain white card, my name and a phone number printed on it in the smallest font the print shop offered, because I've never been a man who takes up more space than he needs. Then I walked out into the cold parking lot, got into my truck, drove home to my son. That was a Tuesday. By Thursday morning, she was calling. I should back up. My name is Roy Callum. I'm 67 years old. I live in a 2-bedroom house on the east side of town, and for the last 4 years I've worked the night shift as a care aide at West Haven Memory Care, mopping floors, turning patients who can't turn themselves, sitting with the ones the overnight hours are hardest for. Before that, I spent 31 years at the county hospice unit 2 towns over. Not as a doctor, not even as a licensed nurse. I was a hospice aide and a chaplain's assistant, and I sat with people in the last stretch of their lives and tried to make sure they didn't feel alone. 412 patients over those 31 years. I kept count because I thought they deserved to be counted. My son Eli is 14. He was 3 when his mother left. I won't go into that. And every decision I've made since has run through one question. What does Eli need his father to be? The answer, I decided early, was steady, present, the kind of man who comes home. So that's what I've tried to be. The woman who sent me home that Tuesday was named Ms. Hargrove. She was the regional director of a company called Meridian Care Partners. 12 facilities across 3 states, a glass office downtown, the kind of posture that announces it has never once waited in a line. She'd come to West Haven to review a situation. The situation was a man named Harold. Harold was 79. He'd been at West Haven for 14 months. He had a diagnosis that had taken most of his language and all of his ease with the world, and for the past 5 of those 14 months he hadn't spoken a word to anyone. Not a nurse, not a visitor, not the facility's contracted behavioral specialist, who came on Thursdays with a clipboard and a gentle voice, and left without much progress. Harold sat by his window and looked at the courtyard, and didn't respond when you spoke to him. He ate if you set the tray in front of him. He slept. He breathed. The staff did everything right by him. His medications were correct. His care plan was thorough. His room was warm. No one had gotten inside. And Ms. Hargrove had been sent, I gathered, to assess whether Harold needed to be transferred to a higher acuity facility. I had been watching Harold for 3 months, not in a way anyone noticed. I mopped his hall. I refilled his water pitcher at 2 a.m. when I passed his room and saw his light still on. I learned that he liked the window cracked 1 inch even in the cold, because once a month or so he would turn toward it and breathe deeply, the way a man does when he's smelling something that takes him somewhere good. I learned that he had a photograph on his nightstand, a farmhouse, summer, a tire swing over a creek, and that on certain nights he would pick it up and hold it for a long time before setting it back down. I knew what that meant. I'd seen it 412 times. Harold wasn't gone. He was just somewhere else in a room inside himself, and the door was locked from the inside. You can't knock that door down. You can only wait near it, quietly, till the person on the other side decides it's safe to open. I asked the charge nurse that Tuesday if I could sit with Harold after my shift. Just sit. No clipboard. She said she'd need to check with Ms. Hargrove, who was still on site doing her review. Hargrove found me in the break room 10 minutes later. She was polite, direct. She had the file in her hand and she explained, not unkindly, that Harold's care was being managed by the clinical team and the contracted specialist, that the facility had protocols, and that she appreciated my interest, but the situation was being handled. She thanked me for my concern. I said, I understand. Because I did. To her, I was the night shift floor aide, the man with the mop. She had a care plan and a specialist and a clipboard, and I was none of those things. She wasn't being cruel. She just couldn't see what I was. I picked up my jacket, nodded to the night nurse, set cart on the counter, and went home. I made Eli breakfast. I helped him find his left shoe, which had somehow ended up on top of the refrigerator, a fact neither of us could explain. I watched him walk down the driveway toward the school bus, that particular 14-year-old walk that is trying hard to look like it doesn't need anyone watching. Then I went to bed. I slept until 3 that afternoon. When I woke up, I had a missed call from a number I didn't recognize and a voicemail from Ms. Hargrove. Apparently Harold had spoken. Not to anyone, exactly. The overnight aide who checked on him at 2 in the morning had heard him through the cracked door, talking quietly, steadily, to the photograph on his nightstand. A whole conversation from the sound of it. By the time the aide looked in, Harold was asleep, and the photograph was laid flat on his chest, face up, the way a man holds a letter he's just finished reading. The morning nurse found him calm in a way she hadn't seen it before. He asked by pointing for his window to be opened 1 inch, Miss. Hargrove had found my card on the counter. She said on the voicemail that she didn't understand exactly, and that she would like to speak with me if I was willing. I called her back. She asked how I knew about Harold. I told her what I'd observed over 3 months. She was quiet for a moment and then asked what was on my card. She had my name and number. She'd looked me up and found a gap she couldn't account for. The gap was this. When I left the county hospice unit, I left quietly. I didn't update directories. I didn't keep a professional profile. I'd done the work because the work needed doing, and when I was done, I needed a smaller life for a while, because Eli needed his father present in grief work. Even when you love it, has a weight that accumulates. What Ms. Hargrove had found, once she dug into the hospice records with my full name, was a man who had sat with 412 patients across 31 years, who had trained 11 care aides who went on to their own careers, and who had, in his last year at the hospice unit, helped the facility write the quiet dignity protocol that the county later adopted as standard. I didn't tell her any of that on the call. I just said I'd be glad to come in and talk about Harold if it would help him. She met me at the facility the next morning. Eli had an early practice, so I dropped him off on the way. He gave me the nod from the sidewalk, that same careful walk, and I watched him go through the gym doors before I pulled out. Ms. Hargrove and I talked for 90 minutes. She was different from the woman in the break room 2 days before. Still direct, still careful, but listening in a way she hadn't been. She asked what I thought Harold needed. I told her. Consistency, quiet, the window cracked, and someone who would sit with him without asking him to perform recovery. No clipboard, no agenda. Just presence, she said. Would you be willing to come back? I said yes, one condition. She asked what it was. I said Harold gets to decide when he's ready, and no one moves him to a higher acuity facility on a timeline set from a glass office downtown. If he's in there, he deserves the time to find his way out. She held my gaze for a moment. Then she said, agreed. I went back to West Haven that Thursday night. I brought my mop, because that's my job and I'm not above it. After my rounds, I sat in the chair beside Harold's door, not inside, just near, and read a book in the hall light while the building got quiet. At 2 a.m. his light was on. I cracked his door 1 inch. He didn't speak. After a while, he turned his head toward the sound of me turning a page, and something in his face eased. I've seen that before, too. It's not an ending, it's a beginning. I drove home at 6, made Eli's breakfast, and watched him find his shoes. Both of them this time. Both of them on the floor where shoes belong. He asked how work was. I said, good, I think it's going to be good. He nodded like he understood. And maybe he did. He's 14. He knows more than I give him credit for. I've never needed anyone to know who I am. I just need to be where I'm needed. That's enough. That's always been enough.